Okay, representational art is artwork that is depicting things in the world around us, the natural world. So when you look at a work of art, regardless if it's a photograph, a painting, a sculpture, when you look at a work of art, if you can identify things within it, people, water, grass, dog, boat, sky, cloud, that is representational. It's something that is depicting forms in the natural world. A still life is a painting or another two-dimensional work of art where the subject matter is an arrangement of objects, of things from the natural world. So historically, you'll see fruit and flowers and pottery, bones, animals kind of coming together in this kind of study or still life. And basically what is going on is that we're focusing in on the materials and the textures, in this case between the fish and the silverware, the texture of the bread, the translucent kind of quality of the glass, the liquid that's inside. So it's just a study or an arrangement of a group of objects. Doesn't really go beyond that, in terms of content or meaning. We have genre. Genre is artwork that depicts casual moments of everyday life and its surroundings. So really important not to mix this up with our typical use of the word genre when it comes to music or literature and so on. It is a particular way of creating art, again, depicting those casual moments of everyday life. Mary Cassatt was a female artist out of Chicago that was very well known for her genre paintings, focusing in on mother and child and those, again, very quiet everyday moments. Just wanted to capture those, things that we might often overlook. So a woman, holding her sleeping baby or feeding her child or, folding laundry or, anything that's kind of typical, normal of everyday life. So that gives you some sense of different ways of working with, the idea of the representation of the, objects from the natural world. Non-representational is artwork that has no reference at all to the natural world or the objects, the images, shapes, forms from that. So an artwork that's non-representational is basically about formal elements like line, shape, color. Jackson Pollock, his action painting that you're seeing here is a great example of that. He's not looking to nature and trying to depict what he sees. He's just working with color and how that color gets put down on the canvas. If he splatters one color, he might be carefully dripping or painting another color onto the canvas and building those up. So even though it doesn't have specific imagery that can create or evoke emotion, the energy and movement and the color choices, the line and things that are putting down can be very expressive still, and it has that potential to it. Abstraction is rendering images and objects in a more simplified or stylized way. So the artist often is looking to something from the natural world, but is starting to respond to that visually, emotionally, and simplifying it down into something not as recognizable as to what that inspiration was. So it really starts to transform these objects into pattern and color and shape and line. So it's stepping away from that kind of representational realistic into something that is kind of in between, a little bit between representational and non-representational. So often you can recognize something within it, but not always. For example, this is a painting by not Jeff, Willem de Kooning. And he did a whole bunch of portraits of women, which this is one of. And although he was supposedly happily married to the same woman for 40 years, he seemed to really have a negative impression of women. He thought that women put makeup on and smiled pretty to lure men into their trap. And man, once we have you in our grasp, off comes that beautiful smile, and out comes the true evil that lurks within us to torment you for the rest of your life. And you can see that response, that emotional reaction to the female, gender coming out. We have clearly a woman here, large-breasted woman, appears to have on a skirt and sandals or, feminine shoes of some type. But look at that face. I mean, it's like, showing us the, underneath, pulling off the skin and looking at this ugliness underneath. The mark making, there's all kinds of aggressive marks that, laying the paint down. It's not smooth and rounded and voluptuous. This is not, a positive reaction to a female form. So, how it, the use of color, the use of the mark making to lay that down and other things can also give you insight into what's going on in that, even in an abstract image like this one. Minimalism is a lot like abstract. You are reducing something to a very simple, pure form. But there are two things that are different that separate this out from abstract. Minimalism is basically void of that expressive content. It's not an emotional response to something else going on around, or something that they're sitting in front of, like de Kooning having a female model. It's usually focusing on formal elements, shapes, line, color. This is a piece on NKU's campus that mystifies a great deal of people. It's a large-scale aluminum box, or stainless steel box, I guess. And basically, it looks like some kind of ventilation system. It's because it's so simple. People just don't know necessarily what it is. Well, Donald Judd was a pretty well-known artist, internationally known artist that was out of Texas, and he loved rectangles, and he made them all different shapes and sizes and colors. He did multiples that he would display together, large-scale single pieces. It was just about that simplicity of the rectangular form that got him excited. And, trying to work with it in as many different ways as he could. Conceptual art is interesting. One thing that I wanted to bring to your attention, because it's something that a lot of people do today, and even art students that you might be exposed to at different university kind of gallery settings. Conceptual art basically is more about the idea behind the work of art than the work of art itself. So a lot of conceptual artists will sit around and talk about their idea in depth and never make anything. But we do have a lot of very well-known conceptual artists that do take it to its final form. Usually, though, the final form is so simple that it just doesn't seem like it holds this intense, deep meaning. And so often text will be kind of included to help communicate a message a little bit. So Barbara Kruger, this is the artist that created the work here that you see, she did a whole series of works, and again we'll see other images of her work in a later lecture. about feminism and about what defines a female, whether we define ourselves that way or whether society is imposing certain definitions on us. And so she does these very simple images where she takes photographs that other people have done and then incorporates text in with it to communicate some of these feminist ideas. So very simple work, much more about the idea. It's very involved, very in-depth, but the finished product, if it gets to that point, is typically something that's very simple and straightforward.